Well, the things going on in sports today. Really, a lot of things going on in sports this week. I guess that means some stuff needs to be talked about. So today, we're going to talk about it, boys. Let's go.
More than the mood, it's the weight and the will. Built for the climb, the story's the grind. This ain't just a pot, it's a whole state of mind. Limitless life. You can keep moving or stand still in fright. I came from nothing to this overnight. I'ma keep killing these stories despite all of the progress we make every day that we see. Man, these women are doing this right. Owning their lives in the day, working hard in the dark. Then they balling their ass off at night. Yeah.
Yo, welcome to Unbothered, where we talk about women's sports in a real, raw, and respected way. Now, I had something else lined up for today, a very special guest. Um, and that conversation is still coming, but the headlines in women's sports this week have been so big, so heavy, um, way too important to wait. So today, I just decided I'm just going to jump in front of the mic and I'm going to break down everything you need to know of what went on in this week, unbothered style. So this show is about receipts. It's about receipts that show what is happening right now in women's sports. And today we got a lot to unpack. So we're going to talk about the Women's Super League, the English WSL 1 and 2, dropping their new CBA, which is huge for women's sports. We're going to talk about the WNBA, obviously, and the ongoing battle for respect and revenue. We're going to talk about the playoff push, breaking down what's going on with Dallas, what's going on with LA. We're going to talk about tennis and the drama that went on at the U.S. Open this week with Miss Taylor Townsend and Miss Ostaplenko. And then Nike dropped a Caitlin Clark logo. We definitely got to discuss that. And then we're going to close with Women's Pro League, the WNFC, where my heart lays. Obviously, dropping big news on the professionalism of women's pro football this week. So we got a lot of ground to cover. Buckle up. This ain't no polite sports talk show, bro. We ain't talking highlight reels. This is Unbothered. Welcome. Before we get going, I do want to let you know that this episode of Unbothered is brought to you by the Unbothered Podcast Shop, your home for streetwear, athletic wear, and everything in between. Look, if you already know Unbothered isn't just a podcast, it's a mindset, it's a culture, it's a family, then now you can wear that energy as well. We've got tees that hit harder than a hot take. We got hoodies that move like statements. We got hats that don't just finish the fit, they start the conversation. Whether you're in the gym, in the streets, or in the stands, this gear says I'm part of something bigger. I'm part of women's sports. This isn't just merch, it's identity. So go hit the shop right now on Etsy at unbotheredpodcast.etsy.com. And because you're part of the Unbothered fam and listen to this podcast, I got you with something beautiful, a discount. Use code unbothered15 at checkout for 15% off your entire order. That's unbothered 15% off. Wear what we talk about, wear what we stand on, wear what it means to be real, raw, and respected. That's Unbothered. All right, now let's start with what's going on across the pond, because them girls, them women, those franchise owners, those business owners in England just showed the entire world what it means to take women's professionalism in sport seriously. The Women's Super League, the English WSL 1 and 2, are introducing new standards in women's pro sports, a minimum living wage salary for every single player. And that means no more patchwork contracts, no more working at the Starbucks after practice to make ends meet, right? It means now there's a floor and nobody falls below it. So they've also added mandatory well-being officers to help support women as they go through their journey to true professionals and try to reach the peak of their athletic ability. They've also added standardized medical and physio access. They've improved maternity protections to where if a player gets pregnant, they must honor that contract through pregnancy and the return. And now for the ones transitioning out of the game, the ones who are planning a life after football, they've added career after football, a life after soccer. They've added career educational support for those players to help with that mental health transition. These are all in their CBA. Now, I need you to understand that before this deal, the WSL 2 players in particular were bartending at night. They were teaching on their off days. They were trying to make ends meet, training in the morning, recovering in the midday, and working at night. That was the norm. And for a lot of women's professional athletes, that is the norm. I'll have to find the stat, but if I'm not mistaken, only like 17% of women's pro athletes actually pay for their entire lifestyle with their sport. Now, instead, these women in the WSL2 are full pros. They wake up, they eat, they train, they recover, they review film, they go to sleep, they do it all over again. That's what the English Women's Super League is trying to get out of this. That's the level of professionalism that's expected for a woman at the top of her game. But I know I've ranted about this, but I'm going to tell you right now about why this deal is so important. See, obviously, a living wage doesn't make these women millionaires, right? It's not that serious of a living wage, okay? But here's why it's so important. See, right now, with the way this CBA is written, the Women's Super League will split 80-20 revenue with the players in the league, meaning 80% of the revenue that comes in will go towards wages, player wages, 20% will go towards operation and profit. 80% of the revenue coming in will go towards player wages, 20% will go towards profit. Now, you say, hey, that's a whole lot. Well, let me tell you something. It helps clubs, it helps with women professionalism. It's transformational. The old guard in the WSL was 40%, which is still a great number for women's professional sports. But this doubles it. It lets these teams reward production. It helps them keep their stars. It helps them to spend more time developing promise and talent that may take a year or two extra than what they thought, right? Not just that, they've taken away the hard cap on top earners. So if the club can afford it, they can pay it. That's how you keep those big names like Beth Mead and Lauren James. That's how you rise the tide. And right now, the English Women's Super League is that rising tide. The league is also growing to 14 teams next summer. So, that brings in more players, more promotion, more money, more sponsorships. It sharpens the knife. And suddenly, you've got a game in the English Women's Super League that looks very eerily similar to men's competitive professional soccer. It's competitive, it's ruthless, and it's sustainable. More teams, more contracts, more money, better players. Now, on the home front, the NWSL, the National Women's Soccer League, is definitely doing great work over here. But these girls, these folks, these women, these pros, these men that are invested in the English Women's Super League just leapfrog them with this revenue split. 80% of the generated revenue. Bro, you know what? The English Women's Super League just set the new floor for where leagues should be paying their professional athletes in both men and women. They created a new standard. See, here's the thing, right? They didn't just make noise. If you're another women's sports league, pay attention. This is how you build. This is how you invest. This is how you put your money where your mouth is when you say women's sports is not only here to stay, but also worth that credit card swipe. And that's why we start here, because England set the floor, but over here, the ladies in the W are still trying to make it to the table. So let's talk about it. In October of 2024, WNBA Players Association opted out of the CBA that is set to expire on October 31st of this year in about 60 days, roughly. That's the clock. They have 60 days between now and then. The fight is about money, but it's more about leverage and respect. See, 2024 became the first full season of charter flights. And after years of players tweeting from airport floors, injuries for players stacking up because, let's just face it, it's really hard to fly commercially, especially when you're flying domestic, right? I mean, domestic flights only have maybe 14 first class seats, and the rest are coach, scrunch legs, and those players are tall. Come on, man. It's a recipe for a disaster, right? But the league finally moved on that and said that charter flights isn't just a luxury that you get in the playoffs, it's the baseline for travel. That's great, right? Indiana just this week broke ground on a $78 million performance center. $78 million for a practice facility for the Indiana Fever. Beautiful. Chicago is investing in one that should break ground next year. New York has set the standard for their facility. That facility is beautiful. But charter flights and facilities aren't the problem. It's not the power. They're progress. Don't get me wrong. And it's a beautiful thing to watch the women's game get to that level of professionalism. But right now, the players are taking home 17.5% of the league revenue. I want you to let that sink in. 17.5% of the league revenue. Now, I just told you that the English WSL is now giving the players 80%. I told you that the NBA players get 50% of the basketball-related income. 50% is at the minimum neighborhood where these women deserve to live in, but you're going to have to spare me with the whole, the league can't afford to pay players when they don't make any money. Excuse me, $78 million for a practice facility, and you can't afford to pay players. And Caitlin Clark has nuclear gravity, right? And the league hasn't been the same since she's been in the league, even though she hasn't played in more than 15 games this year. I don't know the complete number of games she's played, but it hasn't been many this year. Asia Wilson is a global face. Her jersey sells out everywhere it goes. Arenas are boasting record attendance, whether Caitlin Clark is there or not. Networks are bidding record money on the rights to cover the W. Sponsors lining up at the door. Podcasts like mine launching on a day-to-day basis. The pie has grown. The pie got fat slices now, but the slice is not sliced up proportionately. See, charters are cute. Facilities, they're definitely cute. But until that revenue split changes, players are just eating the crumbs at their own dang banquet. We gotta stop calling pay an extra cost for the league. Pay is the league. It's the product. It's these athletes that make the league what it is. And therefore, the W needs to do better. They need to define basketball-related income with transparency. They need to be upfront and honest about their financials and how much the NBA is actually involved. And then they need to pay them women what they owe them. 50-50 on the revenue of the league. Salary minimums that index with the growth. And build a system that rises automatically with success. And they're going to have to do all this over the next 60 days. England, in the Women's Super League, they set the floor. And again, the WNBA is still debating whether revenue exists at all, and we all know it does with the building a $78 million facility. This gap right here, this revenue split could be their undoing if they don't get this right at this pivotal moment of growth for this sport. And speaking of undoing, let's talk about two teams that have been getting on my nerves all season long. Dallas Wings and the Los Angeles Sparks. Now, oh Lord, if you've seen the Unbothered podcast TikTok, then you know that I have renounced my fandom for the Dallas Wings and have gone back to my childhood team, the Los Angeles Sparks. See, the problem is that these two franchises have been making their own beds all season long. And the way they're going right now, they're going to be laying in the beds pretty early over the next week or so. And there's so much to unpack. Dallas is wasting Paige Bueckers and LA is wasting opportunity. Let's talk about Dallas first. Okay, my city, where I live. This is painful because at the beginning of the year, I thought this team would take the next step in getting out of the first 5 picks in the draft. They had what seemed to be a team that was not quite complete yet, but were working their way towards balance with Paige and Arike, Dejanay, and Lee, right? They had depth. They had like promise of a team that would try to get better. What they gave us this year was nothing but chaos. Head coach Chris Coklane's, there's just a lot. Rookie coach who's never coached anything before, and it has shown on their way to a 9-32 record at this point in the season. You watch them play, it's like they almost don't have a real game plan, really erratic in their rotations, really stagnant sets offensively where you got, Paige trying to play the game that she knows, which is, team basketball, move the ball around, dribble drive offense, kick to the open shooter, but none of that, nobody else is playing that game. And so then it's jack up a 3 from nearly half court with 4 seconds left on the shot clock. This is the Wings all game long. Just no adjustments. The problem is, Dallas, this is not a developmental project. This is a pro basketball franchise. So I don't know what the game plan is over there, but Chris Coklane's needs like a JJ Redick type of situation, right? It's easy to shoulda, coulda, woulda when it comes to this, but I'm just going to go ahead and go there. The Lakers got JJ, a championship winning assistant coaches with head coach experience to help make up his bench. Because JJ also only had head coaching experience on his middle school son's team. Okay. And because they helped the brother out, the Lakers were a playoff team. Now, right now, Dallas is playing checkers, and the rest of pro sports is playing chess when it comes to these coaches. Chris Coklain needs to revamp his staff, and somebody needs to take the reins on who he can put on his dang staff. Meaning, get that man a vet, get that man a coach that has been on a championship team. I mean, shoot, the Wings had the opportunity to do exactly what the Golden State Valkyries did and go get a coach, an assistant coach on a championship Las Vegas Aces team that would take a team with a bunch of expansion draft players to the playoffs. Golden State Valkyries, right now as we speak, are sitting in 6th place on their way to the playoffs in their first year as a franchise. And Dallas went to their video room, found a dude with a ponytail and was like, good enough. Now, you can always say there's been injuries, and injuries do hit hard. They hurt, right? Yeah, Arike's knee, JJ's ACL, Lee's been out. Even Paige Bueckers got in on the injury hardship. Dallas has been using hardship signings all year in order to not forfeit games, right? But when you do that, you miss out on cohesion. See, great teams, great players, great coaches, they adapt. Great franchises prepare for injuries in the off season with depth. They add depth to their rosters for this reason. Dallas is moving around like they never had a plan and is super reactionary, and Lord Jesus is getting on my nerves. I think, again, if you follow the Unbothered podcast TikTok, then you know that I think in the Dejanay Carrington trade, that certainly didn't help matters. And the only one that won that trade was Dejanay Carrington and the Minnesota Lynx. The Lynx got a win right now player that can slash and come off the bench if they want to, or even start if they want to. And the Wings lost a glue player, somebody who helped bring along the rookie Paige Bueckers, somebody who had the trust and the chemistry of her teammates, somebody who was holding together part of the little cohesion that they actually did have. So now you got a Dallas Wings team that stands around, waits for Paige Bueckers to be spectacular, Arike may show up or she may not, and they don't win games. And that's how things are going right now in the 2-1-4. You build everything around a player like Paige Bueckers. And right, Paige Bueckers isn't just good, bro. She's a generational talent. And I know earlier I said generational crowd pleaser with Caitlin Clark. I was very specific when I said that. And I'm very specific right now when I say Paige Bueckers is a generational talent. You build everything around a player like Paige Bueckers. She's got a bag that is deep, and it doesn't matter what a defense throws at her, she's going to get hers. Defense can be physical. She can be physical back. Defense can be playoff. She'll bust you for a three. Her bag, her handles, her dribble is so deep. You're never going to see a player as good as her come through your likes again if you're the Dallas Wings. Not likely. The Wings are wasting her right now. That's malpractice, and that's exactly what the Wings have been known for. You can't ask a once-in-a-generation guard to carry a broken culture, and that's what the Wings have done with every single good player that have come through their franchise. They've done this before way too many times to count. Let's look at the list, okay? You got Marina Mabrey, Kayla Thornton, Veronica Burton, Alicia Gray, Satu Sabali. And this is just since 2022. The list is longer than that. They had Skylar Diggins in her prime. This franchise, when it comes to using the talent that they've been given, has committed nothing but travesties. So, Wings, what do you do from here? Here's the thing that I think you need to do. You ready for this? Trade Arike Ogunbowale. Start there. See, the problem is Arike deserves to win now for the back half of her career. And Dallas needs to reset. You can't keep going through a season with hardship signings, injury, and a coach that doesn't know what the heck. He's over there writing stick figures and arrows on his clipboard and making no adjustments. Flip Arike for a first rounder or two, maybe a balanced package of players as well. Build around what Paige Bueckers can do, give her free reign and an open, just a green light to do whatever she needs to do. Rebuild this franchise with shooting, size on the inside, and defense, and do it on Paige's timeline while her window is open. That will honor both careers. It'll give Paige a team that's built around her skill set and her talents. People actually love Paige in the league. People want to play with Paige's teammates. Maybe it'll also bring in some top-level free agents in 2026. And then it gives Arike a chance to go play for a winner. She has poured her heart and soul out in the 2-1-4. She deserves that. And truthfully, at this point, flip Arike for a couple first-round picks could actually bring AZ Fudd or Juju to the Wings this year. It would be extremely valuable. Imagine AZ Fudd and Paige Bueckers back together on the court. The 2-1-4, the W, the LGBTQ plus community will go wild if that is what takes place during the 2026 WNBA draft. Now let's talk about LA. See, the problem with the Sparks is that they control their own destiny, even with the slow start out of the gate when the season started. See, the problem is that they ran into a buzzsaw, which has been their own selves. The pressure didn't make a diamond this time, it busted a pipe. They've been killing themselves with turnovers. Like, hard to watch style turnovers. 20-something a game over the last, 5 games is mind-boggling. And they've been coming up with empty possessions at the worst times in games, like under 2 minutes. Kelsey Plum has been electric, but in the late game, she's super chaotic. And if I'm a coach, I am shrinking her menu in late game situations. Like, you can run a pick and roll with your big. You can run a horns or a 77 twist. You can execute those actions. Or you can get to the corner, wait for Rakia Jackson to drive and kick and spot up for a 3. You can run that action. But what you can't do is play that hero ball. That 18 seconds into the shot clock, jack up a contested shot. that full court or three-quarter court pass with 50 seconds left in the game that goes over the head of the big you're throwing it to and gives possession back to the team that you're trailing by 2 points. Like, those plays, baby girl, you got to stop. Now, my Sparks, we still have a chance. 1.5 games back of 8th place of the Indiana Fever with 4 games to go, but we're going to need a miracle and a prayer. Those 4 games are against Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, and Las Vegas. And the problem is Atlanta is on a 3-game win streak, Phoenix on a 5-game win streak, and Las Vegas is on a 12-game win streak. All 3 of those teams are playing their best ball right now. All 3 are playoff teams. Now, obviously, Dallas is not, so we maybe can count that as a win. But with Paige Bueckers on that team, you just never know how Dallas is going to show up. Heck, Paige dropped 44 on the Sparks just last week, and the Sparks still won, but it was a competitive game. They can still do this, the Sparks can. They just need cohesion. Not even cohesion. They need discipline, and they need better ball handling. And I'm not talking about dribbling. I'm talking about the know-how of when to make a pass, when to force a shot, how to get wide open shots, like better ball handling. They need Indy to drop all 4 of their last 4, which could happen. Indy is not playing their best ball right now. They got too many people injured. They're playing hard for Stephanie White, but they're not playing their best ball, especially with Caitlin Clark out of the lineup. Now, they're playing better with her out of the lineup, but with all the injuries now, they really actually do need Caitlin to come back. With Sophie Cunningham out for the rest of the year, Rakia Jackson is a star on the Sparks. Cameron Brink has high potential. Here's what they need to happen in order to win those 3 of the last 4, and hope and pray that Indy loses all of their last 4. See, they need Rakia Jackson to continue being the star that she is. They need her to continue scoring, being aggressive, shooting, slashing, rebounding, and being totally aggressive, taking over games. They need Cameron Brink to find some reliable offense, 10 to 14 points a game, without compromising her rim protection. They need her to quit fouling like it's a hobby, right? And then they need Dearica Hamby to continue to be the engine that forces everything to go with the Sparks. And finally, they need Kelsey Plum to quit trying to do it all. They're not out of it. But if they don't get those things, it's a wrap. All right. So we talked about the W, but let's talk about one of the craziest stories right now. Probably one of the most devastating news articles I've ever read in my entire life about women's sports. And it all has to do with pants. We're going to talk about it right after this. All right, y'all. You hear me on this mic every week, but let me tell you, Unbothered is bigger than one voice. Women's sports is bigger than one voice. And that's why I am opening the door for a co-host. Somebody who lives women's sports the way that I do. Somebody who can bring their perspective, bring their fire, their energy, their receipts, and sit right here with me, challenging the women, challenging the takes, and sharpening the debates, helping to carry this culture forward. If you got that energy, if you got a voice, and if you got a love for women's sports, I want to hear from you. Hit me up. Email me at UNBPOD, that's umpod@gmail.com, or slide in my DMs on Instagram. That is UNBpod on Instagram, on TikTok, slide in those DMs. See, this ain't about filling a seat. This is about building a duo that can't be ignored. It's about real, raw, and respected culture. And that's Unbothered, and could be you next to me. Let's find out. Hit me up. Have you ever thought while wearing white pants that they were holding you back from your true potential? Holding you back from sitting on certain things, or, eating certain things, with the threat that maybe that red juice or that dirt on that bench might actually end up on those pants and ruin your outfit? In women's soccer, the data says yes. Sports economist Alice Krumer studied 2 decades of international women's soccer and found that teams in white shorts produce 30.34 to 0.37 fewer goals per match compared to teams in darker shorts. He then did the same for the men and showed no such effect. The why, in my opinion, is not so mysterious. See, women struggle with leak anxiety. When they're on their periods, wearing white shorts, it's just not a good situation. UEFA and the youth sports surveys lined up and did a little poll and said that most women and girls report fear bleeding through light-colored shorts as a top concern when playing sports. When I say most, I mean 60%. Actually, it was 65% of women in sports reported this. The shorts deal, this isn't just about fashion, it's performance. It's a concentration shredded by design choice. For years, women's sports have adapted to men's uniform styles. So you think about the names on the back have been traditionally high right across the bottom of the neck. Girls and women have long hair, so usually the names get covered up. Numbers scrunch up in the midsection. Typically, a man's torso is longer. The uniforms are designed for men, and so when women put them on, the hips scrunch the jersey up, and the numbers scrunch up. It's hard to read, right? Undergarments, they're square. When you start to wear pads or tights, they're square. They don't fit your curves, so therefore they rise or they fall or they shrink. All of these are design flaws that are costing women performance, and honestly, it's truly a liability. This is the microcosm of women's sports that men don't have to deal with. See, details in the clothing usually either fuel a performance or they tax it. It's why men's sports go to great lengths to make these beautiful uniforms. They make the players feel good. And if you feel good, you look good, then you do good. That's how it works. For decades, the details in women's sports have been ignored. We talk about equipment, we're talking about scheduling, we're talking about travel, and now we're talking about uniforms. See, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts when it comes to women's sports. But the good news is now we have receipts. The excuse era for women's sports is over. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to design women's athletic uniforms, the colors included, for women. It's time to hang up the white pants. It's time to build out athletic undergarments that flex to the curves of a woman's body. It is time to shorten the torso on the uniforms so that the numbers continue to spread out. And it is certainly past time for the last name on the jersey to go below the uniform so that long hair don't care. Basically, if your uniform costs your women athletes points, if it costs them performance, it's time to change it. See, respect isn't just about white shorts. It's about designing things that let women play free. It's time across all sports to fix the way women are represented with their uniforms. Let's move to the big news of the week. Taylor Townsend faced Jelena Ostapenko in the US Open earlier this week and handled her in straight sets. Like, it wasn't even, I think she won 7-5 and 6-1 or something like that. It was ridiculous. She showed a different composure, a different presence, a different joy. Should have been the story. Instead, she got, and in turn we got, a lecture on etiquette, complaints about a net point, a net cord, and a handshake, and ugly words like "you're uneducated, you're classless," and "wait till we get outside of the U.S." And then came the apology from Ostapenko that never really said Taylor's name. So let's dive into it a little bit because I'm going to talk to you about the mindset behind this because this one is bigger than one match. See, tennis has an etiquette problem. And let me just say, I'm not saying them folks in tennis are rude and that everybody is like Ostapenko because that's not true. What I'm saying is that the sport clings to quiet crowds and muted celebrations and little golf claps and, like they're sacred relics. I was watching James Blake at the US Open, giving his sideline commentary. And he was talking like this just in order to not disturb the tennis players as they're playing their match. Are you kidding me, man? Meanwhile, every time a player shows any real emotion, the clips go viral. The conversation, bro, it catches fire, and new fans like me show up and watch because we want to see that. We want to feel that energy. There's people right now watching the US Open who have never watched tennis before, all because of the drama that ensued with Taylor Townsend and Jelena Ostapenko this week in the US Open. See, when Serena did a heavy grunt whenever she would play games, we love that. When Coco flexes or cries, we love that. When Osaka comes to the mic and tells the truth, we love that. And when Taylor showed up at the US Open this week with pride in her son, we love that. This is culture. This type of thing is what sells tickets, is what we're seeing in the WNFC, is what we're seeing in the WNBA. This type of proximity and intimacy to the emotions and energy of the players that are playing in this game is what grows the sport. Ostapenko, let me tell you something. Taylor didn't disrespect tennis and she didn't disrespect you. She disrespected the script. She refused the box labeled polite and tennis etiquette and then picked up the box labeled be myself. And that's exactly why she resonated, because joy and swagger is contagious. It sells. Now, let's talk about the BS apology by Ostapenko. Homegirl, you ain't even mentioned her name. You gave the world an Apple Note screenshot apology after you cut off all comments on all your socials before that basically said, please, Adidas, don't drop me, laced with a bunch of excuses about English and country culture. Homegirl, you could have done better. That wasn't accountability. And, Taylor handled it with class, but I'm going to tell you in the most unbothered way possible, that was some BS. That was damage control. And I hope that you called her and got that situated personally, because that apology looked like you wrote it in ChatGPT and you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Anyway, tennis, if you want this sport to grow, y'all got to stop policing passion and start platforming it. And Ostapenko, find you some respect, because that was messed up. All right. Now let's talk about Caitlin Clark. You can't have a podcast with the WNBA in it without talking about Caitlin Clark. And I get it, but let's be honest, she sells out arenas. She boosts TV ratings. She is a one-woman economy when it comes to women's basketball. A generational crowd pleaser, just like I said. Nike dropped her logo this week. 2 mirrored C's. Very sterile. Very static. And I had to ask, bro, Nike is a huge conglomerate. Is this really the best they could have done? I felt kind of bad for Caitlin. It kind of felt like a Temu Chanel. And I'm not knocking Temu, because let me tell you something. This shirt that I'm wearing right now, I love this shirt. And it came from Temu. But this logo for Caitlin Clark's Nike line just reads like, yeah, women's sports makes money now. Caitlin Clark makes a lot of money. We want some of that money, but we still ain't gonna give it the full treatment it deserves. It lacks I don't even know, it lacks depth or something. Okay, Caitlin Clark is known for hitting threes beyond the arc. Okay, so we get the 2 C's with the arc. Okay, we get that, but where's the rest of who Caitlin is? Right? Compare that to Angel Reese's Reebok logo, which came out. It looks like a classy Barbie logo. Tells exactly who Angel is. She's a classy Bayou Barbie type of girl, right? With, long hair all the time. So the A and the R kind of pivot and flow through and they kind of draw out a little bit, right? You can tell exactly who Angel Reese is from her AR and Reebok logo. Let's talk about Asia Wilson. Her logo from Nike is sleek. It shows her nickname, the diamond in the rough, right? Because you got the diamond coming through, and it's a logo that kind of is rough around the edges, and she always calls herself rough around the edges, right? It's the logo that really doesn't fit into the rest of the Nike's portfolio of the way their logos look. Right? It's different. because she's different and she doesn't fit into any box. And it really comes through and displays who A'ja Wilson is as a person and as an athlete. Their identities between Angel Reese, A'ja Wilson, they live inside the logos. You need more example? Let's go to the men. Let's look at LeBron James's logo for Nike. It's a crown with the L and the J. King James. We know who King James is with that logo. And it tells exactly who he is. LeBron James is the best basketball player to ever walk on this earth. And you can tell with how noble and regal his King LJ is. Kobe Bryant's logo, the sheath with the sword, right? Kobe Bryant was a killer from the jump, but he worked really, really hard at molding his craft into being one of the greatest to ever walk on the earth. And that's what the sheath is. You can tell his personality from the logo, but what happened with Nike? Now, all these logos except Angel Reese's came from Nike. But what happened with them when it comes to Caitlin? Two possibilities. One, they couldn't figure out who she was beyond a shooter behind the arc. They couldn't figure it out. So they played it safe. Or two, they didn't care enough to invest the energy that it takes to make an icon that says who she is and assumed that her name, Caitlin Clark, would sell it anyway. Generational deserves generational. Whether you're a generational crowd pleaser, a generational podcaster, a generational basketball player, a generational writer, a generational eater, sleeper, or drinker, generational deserves generational. And Caitlin Clark should have a logo that every kid can doodle from memory, a logo that says exactly who she is, what she believes in, where she came from. At this point, they would have been better off with just putting a picture of her face. Branding ain't just aesthetics, bro. It's leverage. Branding will make or break your business. It'll make or break your product. We've seen that with what's going on with Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel tried to be more inclusive and nearly sent their own brand into bankruptcy just by fixing a logo. See, logos become movement. Movement becomes merch. Merch becomes the market, and the market is the power at the table. And if this is a placeholder for a logo for her, that's fine. But fix it. If this is the final, she deserves better. She deserves the power at the table, period. All right, so let's close with football. I mean, real football this time. Women's professional football. The WNFC is about to do something that nobody in women's pro football has done ever before. A truly professional women's combine leading up to the 2026 tackle season. Sunday, September 28th in Miami, my actual hometown, my birthplace in Miami, 305 Dade County, Wade County, Florida. In Liberty City, probably a couple blocks from my family's house. At Luther Campbell Field, the WNFC is going to call it the Her Game Combine. It's an invitation-only, structured pipeline to playing professional all in the WNFC being built right in front of our face. So who's running the field? Man, this combine, they've announced, is hosted by the NFL All-Pro Devontae Freeman, Liberty City's own. He's putting on a pro pedigree behind the whistle. On the field, it's led by a whole bunch of people. It's a stacked staff. We're talking about Only One Way, Ja'Cory Nichols. We're talking about 300, Josh Hicks. We're talking about Sky's the Limit, Morgan Brooks. We're talking about Two Live Craig and Craig LeBlanc. We're talking about big names. James Everett, Route God. We're talking about big names when it comes to training for the NFL, training for the top athletes in the country. Almost all of them go through these big names right here to get to that 1% of 1%, that NFL level. And this year, on September 28th, the top 1% of 1% in the WNFC will be trained by them at the Combine. They're mixing all pros with vets and free agents. The league has already announced a couple names who will be in attendance. This year's 2025 WNFC league MVP and Sarah Teubner. Check her out in episode 3. She will be there, the shutdown corner. on the Texas Elite shutdown safety on the Texas Elite Spartans. Jewel Grimsley will be there. The championship quarterback, Michelle Angel, check her out in episode 6. She will be there. The offensive player of the year, Kez Wesley, check her out in episode 4. She will also be there. Rookie of the year, DeJour Miles. Rushing leader, Jasmine Gamble. Playmaker of the year, D. Scott. Lexi Floyd, the 44U athlete, Unbothered's own family, D-Train. Destiny Yarbrough will be in attendance. Adriana Gutierrez will be in attendance. Regina Jackson. Look, the list goes on and on and on. Lots of notable free agents as well. Man, there's a lot going on in this combine. Decision makers from across all of the WNFC teams will be there. Also, this is where top talent goes to get measured, to get looked at, to get offers right away. See, this is bigger than the day. This is the WNFC saying we're going to continue to push the needle and take women's professionalism to the next level when it comes to tackle football, right? This is the WNFC building a pipeline, a college or high school sports to combine to contract pipeline. This is the WNFC actually gathering real true data on what it means to be a top athlete in the league that they can measure some of these free agents off of. They're building data to draft. And you know what happens after that? Salaries across the board. This event is content for the league, right? It becomes one-on-one battles and human stories that are ready for broadcasting sponsorships. It's a magnet for crossover athletes. You know, if you're a woman and you're running track, or you're playing rugby, or you're playing basketball, or you're fighting in MMA or boxing, now as a top athlete, you can see a lane to women's pro football. On top of that, while this is going on, they're also hosting a girls clinic for girls 18 and under during this time as well. See, they are pulling the next generation onto the grass with this event in Miami. And they're doing it in a state where the top athletes already live. This is how you build a bottom-up pipeline. This is how you show the on-ramp in the same camera frame as the destination. See, this right here, man, to me, this is a declaration that women's football is measurable, it's marketable, and it's professional. And I can't wait to see how these athletes are represented, what kind of talent comes out of there for National Tryout Day, the fight that's going to ensue over some of the contracts for this talent coming out of there. It's all going to be so good for the league, and I'm excited about it, and I hope that you are as well. Well, those are our final big topics. Quick hits. Here we go. Liberty clinched the playoff spot despite dropping to the Valkyries. Indiana's $78 million performance center is officially underway. Golden State might not see a playoff game at their arena because it might get bumped for the Laver Cup. And still in 2025, in women's sports, we're doing that. Way. Venus Mercury are hot. The Aces are the hottest team in all of sports right now. The Sparks are terrible. The Wings are the worst thing I've ever seen. And the standings in the W are chaos. And that is the beauty of the game. So today wasn't about problems, y'all. Wasn't about problems at all. But I did want to jump on here and give y'all what was going on this week, because there's a lot going on this week in the mindset of women's sports. England laid the floor, 80-20 revenue split. The WNBA, it needs to get on board. Taylor Townsend proved that tennis needs some flash and pizzazz, and the WNFC is doing what the WNFC always does, leading the way in professionalism and making this game, women's pro tackle football, what it should be when it comes to showcasing its top athletes. Every story today was a thread in the same fabric, women's sports owning its own future, and the path forward is super simple. We need to build systems, not stopgaps. We need to invest in the infrastructure of women's sports, and we need to design like we expect women to play at their top level, and like women's sports is here to stay. And then we need to pay the women for doing exactly what women do, excel at everything we touch. What's going on right now in women's sports is the foundation of the ocean. And the only question is, who is ready to keep up when the tide rises. Another story, another truth, real, raw, respected. That's Unbothered. That's 44U. Before we get out of here, I want to take a quick break to talk directly to the athletes out there. College, pro, it doesn't matter what level you're on. If you wear a jersey, this message is for you. If you are putting in the work and building your brand, then you deserve to have your name work for you. At Unbothered and 44U, we're building a lane for athletes who want to own their brand, lock in NIL deals, and make sure the money matches the grind. This is for hoopers, football players, track stars, fighters, anybody playing at a high level who knows they've got a market value. If you're ready to step in that lane, hit me up. Email me at unbpod@gmail.com or simply DM me on all of our socials at UNBPOD. Let's talk about where you're at, what you want, and how we can make your name pay you back. This isn't just representation at 44U. This is partnership. This is culture. This is NIL done in an unbothered way. Real, raw, and respected. Reach out. Let's work.
Yeah, we in this here. We never leaving, we killing this here. Eating this here. Leaving no crumbs, give you something to feel. Unbothered is real, more than a move. It's the weight in the will. Built for the climb, the story's the grind. This ain't just a pot, it's a whole state of mind. Limitless life. You can keep moving.